and different roles in our lives. I do a values exercise, and I explore what your values are in each role. I'm almost thinking that we could talk about senses in different roles, because in my freedom life, I'm very kinesthetic. I just run around like crazy and I'm always moving. But in a different, like a work environment, I'm very auditory and very visual. So how do we, if we're supposed to pick up our dates' cues about them really quickly, how do we assess their senses across those roles, and how do we know what's more important?
I don't know if it's so important to know what's more important. What's important is to feel their hierarchy, sense their hierarchy, if you will, so that you can start to speak to them in their language. So it's true that in different roles we utilize different senses more. So although I'm not very auditory, I sit still and listen in a concert. And someone who might not be very visual will look at what they're interested in shopping for, let's say.
Right.
But beyond that, you want to know what the situation calls for. There are chapters in the book on being interviewed, being the interviewee.
Right.
And there are chapters on the workplace and how you can use this methodology in any situation. So in terms of that first meeting, let's say the other person, let's say the guy, for instance, comes over and kind of bounds over. You're at a dinner party. He bounds over. And he says something about, I love the color of your dress. Boom! One mark in visual.
Well, how about kinesthetic, since he bounded over?
Yeah, bounded over, he gets a mark in kinesthetic. So
okay.
Now you're keeping track. And what you're going to be doing is transmitting to him that you're interested. That's the important part. As well as starting to use the language that he seems most predominant in.
Right. Well, I could see this being pretty effective in terms of conflict management. Let's say you're in a relationship in that 5 to 7 year stretch where you know everything, you think you know everything about them, even what they're going to say. When you have these brick walls that you run into and you can't get around them, this methodology looks like it would be a good way to peel away, because maybe you don't know why they're doing what they're doing. You can't see any reason for them to do what they're doing. How would you use your method to clear away some of these conflicts with some of your patients?
Well, one of my very favorite and least favored of my people is a weekly meeting for couples. That they meet for 10 minutes, same time, same place, every week, and take turns saying one thing that went well in the relationship for them. After the positive is put on the table, they each say one thing that needs work. Both are on the table. They then discuss whether indeed they're going to determine the kind of work that it needs, or they're going to table that for another meeting. If they keep that within a sense mode language, so what went well for me this week, for instance, this is an example, was the way that you hugged me when I came home from work. It felt so sweet and dear. So it's within, I mean, you don't have to say, I got a tactile hit. You can talk normally.
Right.
Or the other person saying, you know, you didn't call me for 2 days. I like to hear the sound of your voice. So you keep it within the loose boundary of the sense talk. Okay. That starts to educate you how important are the different senses to your partner.
That's what, when you said that, that just triggered it for me, is that you can begin to build a list. And it seems like it's a classic positive reinforcement. If someone said, I really would appreciate a real kiss when you leave in the morning, it's important to me, then that's a really solid message, because maybe it wasn't important to the other person, But once you realize your spouse really values that, you've got then that list
Mm-hmm.
to, and we called, I think, I can't remember who I had on with